I don't think anyone truly knew how close I was to breaking. From the outside, my life looked stable. I had a job. I paid my bills. I showed up when people needed me. Friends called me strong. Family members said, "You always figure things out." But what no one saw were the nights I sat alone in my car, engine off, staring at nothing, trying to find the strength to go inside my own home. Trying to convince myself that everything was fine, when deep down I knew it wasn't. I grew up learning that strength meant silence. In my family, emotions weren't spoken about. Pain wasn't acknowledged. We didn't cry in front of each other. We survived, or at least we pretended to. My parents struggled financially, and from a young age, I learned how to survive without asking for help. I watched my mother stretch every dollar, working herself to exhaustion, yet always smiling when company came over. I watched my father carry stress like a second skin, silent and stoic, even when I could see the worry etched into the corners of his eyes. I promised myself I would never be a burden. By the time I became an adult, being strong had become my identity. I didn't allow myself to fail, or at least not publicly. Friends came to me for advice, coworkers relied on me to stay calm in chaos, and family members leaned on me when their worlds seemed to crumble. I became the invisible anchor everyone depended on. And that's how I learned to ignore my own breaking points. When my first serious relationship ended, I didn't cry in front of anyone. I came home, made dinner, went to bed, and woke up the next day like nothing happened. When my bank account dipped dangerously low because of unexpected bills, I smiled and said I was fine. I convinced myself that other people had it worse, so my struggles didn't count. I buried my feelings deep, thinking that pretending would make them disappear. But pain doesn't disappear just because you refuse to acknowledge it. Pain waits. It grows. And eventually it demands to be felt. I can pinpoint the moment I realized that my way of living wasn't working. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I was sitting at my desk at work, scrolling through emails, trying to focus, when I felt my chest tighten. My heart started racing for no clear reason. My hands shook uncontrollably. Suddenly, it felt like the room was closing in on me. I tried to breathe, but each inhale felt shallow and insufficient. I excused myself and ran to the restroom, locking the door behind me. I slid down the wall and buried my face in my hands. I wasn't dying, not physically, but I felt like I could die from the weight of my own emotions. Sitting there, I realized just how fragile my so-called strength had been all along. I had spent years pouring everything into being dependable, capable, and unbreakable, while completely neglecting the one person I was supposed to care for most, myself. That night, instead of numbing the feeling with food, scrolling endlessly on my phone, or pretending it never happened, I made a quiet decision. I reached out. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't post about it on social media. I didn't make a speech. I simply sent a message to someone I trusted. I'm not okay. The weight of typing those words was heavier than anything I had carried before. I almost deleted it, almost convinced myself that I couldn't admit weakness.
But I sent it anyway.
And something surprising happened. I wasn't judged. I wasn't dismissed. I wasn't told to toughen up. I was met with understanding, empathy, and support. For the first time, I allowed myself to be human. In the weeks that followed, I began to notice the little things I had been ignoring for years. The sleepless nights that left me drained. The anxiety that bubbled beneath the surface every time I received a text or email. The constant worry that I was never doing enough, being enough, giving enough. I started keeping a journal. I wrote down my thoughts, my fears, my small victories. At first, it felt awkward, even painful, but soon it became a release. I could pour out the parts of myself that no one else saw. I also began having conversations I had avoided for years. I spoke honestly with my friends about how hard life had been. I shared with my family that I had been struggling silently. It wasn't easy. Some were surprised. Some didn't know how to respond. But those conversations planted seeds of understanding, and slowly, bridges that had been weak for years began to strengthen. I learned that healing doesn't happen overnight. Some days are still heavy. Some days, The anxiety creeps in like a shadow. But now I recognize it. I greet it. I allow myself to feel it, and then let it go. I started setting boundaries. I learned that saying no doesn't make me selfish. I learned that rest isn't laziness. I learned that asking for help doesn't make me weak, it makes me human. One of the hardest lessons I learned was this: strength doesn't mean carrying everything alone. True strength lies in knowing when to ask for help, when to set limits, and when to care for yourself with the same dedication you care for others. I also learned the importance of small joys. Watching the sunrise, drinking coffee without rushing, calling a friend just to hear their voice, walking in the park. These simple moments became lifelines. I realized that life isn't just about surviving. It's about living, feeling, and connecting. Today, my life isn't perfect. Bills still stress me. Relationships still challenge me. Work still overwhelms me. But I face these things with honesty. I show up. I work hard. I give. But I also pause. I breathe. I check in with myself. And when I stumble, I allow myself to stumble, not with shame, but with compassion. If you're listening to this and you feel tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix, if you feel strong on the outside but broken on the inside, if you feel like you're carrying a world no one else can see, please know this: you are not weak for feeling overwhelmed. You are not failing because you need help. You are not alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit that you're struggling and give yourself permission to heal. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say, I am not okay today, and that's okay. And if you remember one thing after listening to this story, let it be this: strength isn't silence. Strength is honesty. Strength is vulnerability. Strength is allowing yourself to be human and letting others meet you there. Because every story has a voice, and every voice deserves to be heard. Subscribe to True Life Voices for real-life stories, emotional journeys, and reminders that you're never alone. New stories every week.